the lymphocytes in the tissue may be a consequence, the heart attacks, maybe the infarcts can be a signal. So then it's difficult to see, and then it's difficult to see in the heart once the people are done the postmortem. Dr. Bolland, maybe we could now look at what Dr. Langer has seen. We have got analyses and photos of the content of the vaccines. Maybe we could jump into that. Maybe you could present that, and we could later turn back to your points of view, just to illustrate what we are actually at here. Could you just briefly explain what these images are? You're speaking for different people. This is a residual vaccine, BioNTech Pfizer. Very impressive what we see here. It is moving. It looks like something that is produced in the dark field microscope on the sample carrier on the slide. So we have one at the bottom, one at the top, and that holds the specimen, and nothing moves normally. And here we see the structure moving through the whole of the image. In a different batch of BioNTech, we found this, which looks like, well, could be a chip. Unfortunately, we haven't seen the first picture yet, or did I miss it? I couldn't see it. This is Dr. Bolland speaking. Well, probably you have to release the screen. I think it was visible for the audience, and it was just not in the Zoom. Okay. If Mr. Bolland wants to see it, we have to share our screen. Maybe, meanwhile, I can comment that this structure has been reported from other areas. I think it's going to be part of that presentation as well. We found that from Gitara, the same structure. So it does repeat from in that BioNTech vaccine. Can you see the image now, Dr. Bolland? We can't hear anymore. I can hear you. Okay. So this was a batch, BioNTech batch. What else do you see in the background? There's lots of movement going on. So BioNTech is moving. You see that? That could be the vaccine particles, the nanolipids. Can you say how big this object is? Well, up to 40 mu. Yeah. We have found up to 0.5 millimeter sized particles, and they are visible in the light microscope from Professor Burkhardt, by the way. Again, the chip, and this is the same vaccine in the normal light microscope in the hardened. It's the same object 3 months later, the one that was floating, the bigger one. Now that it is this one here, it was here and dried out. It forms this shape here. Here we have Johnson & Johnson, a massive object as well. Again, here showing these structures with sharp edges, well-defined edges. So maybe a question to the experts: what happens if this moves into the capillary vessels in the lymph node it's moved to the lymph node. Well, it's very big. For the small capillary vessels, it's very big. If I can say this, we know nanoparticles, they are eaten by macrophages, which is what they can do if they have sharp edges. We know that from polystyrenes and graphene oxide, and we get a so-called biocorona around the edges that mRNA and proteins wrap it up, and that makes the body makes it unharmful for the body, but it is an inflammatory process that happens around these nanoparticles. There's good research on that. This, again, Johnson & Johnson, with this little aeroplane-like structure moving. We've seen this plane in many samples, and it always has this shape, so it's not coincidental that it has the shape. We have seen it often. The small part at the top is moving as well. This is something that we also see. This is blood of a vaccinated person. We see the money roll phenomena here, and this is not a hair, it's not contamination. We have taken a piece of cloth material. It looked like graphene layers. It's very, very long, and it's double light shedding. Double light shedding, what does that mean? It means it's a foreign body. Maybe the pathologist could explain. It's non-organic. So it's nothing biologic that should be inside the body. If you could this be Morgellons? I've seen images shortly after this. It looked like graphene layers. I can't say whether it's Morgellons. Also, these structures have been observed a number of times by different people, always in the blood of vaccinated people and only after the vaccination. This is a smear of one of my patients who had a left-sided paralysis after the vaccination, who has MS relapses, who has autoimmune antibodies, cerebral. And this image was 6 months after the vaccination. We see these metal splinters dancing, and the blood, this pineapple shape, is not live anymore. The only thing that still moves is these parts, and the white bit is a granulocyte which tries to catch this contamination, and apparently it can't do so. We have one at the top and on the right of that granulocyte as well. So now we've got pictures that I didn't take. This is Bärbel Gitaler's image. Miss Gitaler sent us the latest images that she sent. We again have these strings. This is 600-fold magnitude after a BioNTech vaccination. After BioNTech vaccination, contaminations in the blood. Again, here visible the lumping of the red erythrocytes. And now everything much smaller around it. This is done by Mrs. Helena Kren. She is a practitioner. Again, new structures, something that connects. Again, these string-like structures in the blood, and the erythrocytes look quite well in this. And again, a different magnitude. Again, these long-shaped structures. We don't know what this is. Interesting here, this one has a nearly rectangular shape. Show the film if you can, if it's here. Here we have BioNTech, as is listed at the bottom. Can we have that enlarge? This is BioNTech. So we took a residue of the vaccine and tried to deliver that cooled, and if we put that under a microscope, it warms up and becomes very active. This live vaccine is something that I heard several reports of, is only provided by BioNTech. Moderna is a problem. Usually it is not available as a residual. But again, we have this bar here that we saw in the first image. We've got this structure here, and we see liquid vaccine with particles that move. If you had AstraZeneca, it was very still, no contamination, none of these movements. This is Janssen. Again here, a drop. In this drop, we have this lump here of particles corresponding to what we've seen from Dr. Lange's images before. Here is again. It's a bit difficult to see. It's difficult to put focus on a single droplet of specimen. Here we also see some of these flying objects, difficult to see as well. The interesting point here is, and I may say this is again Combinati, BioNTech, you don't need a special microscope for this. You could do that with a bit of luck in a simple light microscope. You see a lot of it in it. And the question is that we wonder about, but that will take us to the legal issue. Why does the Paul-Ehrlich Institute doesn't see this? Probably because they only look at what they call appearance. And that means if there's nothing big in it, if you look at it with the naked eye, it's enough. And if you look into a bit more detail, it would be possible to see this, because everybody could see this. Everyone can see these contaminations again and again and again, and not just as we've just had with Moderna and Japan recently. So then it dries out, it doesn't move as much, and then when it is dried, these crystalline structures develop. In this case, this was Johnson & Johnson. Of course, nobody knows what these white dots are. It's an aesthetic image. Others would know what this means. We have authorities, we have federal institutes for that. They should explain. In the middle of the image, we see one of these triangular plane-shaped, like airplane-shaped structures. They are not very frequent, but they are present. Shall we continue? Well, that's it. Maybe you could ask Dr. Muck to, who worked with a group in Canton in Austria, and you found similar images. Can you hear us? We'll have to switch channels. Yes, I can hear you. We're just... So, first of all, good evening. My name is Maria Mukmanok, and I work in a scientist group in Austria with a number of teams of analysts, general practitioners, internists, and a molecular biologist. And we've looked at different specimens of the vaccine in Graz, one group, and one group in Canton, which I form part of, to do analyses, and I pleased to represent this and present what we have found AstraZeneca and BioNTech Pfizer. I've prepared a couple of video sequences where I would like to highlight some of the substances. We have also prepared the offer and like to do that to reproduce this. This can be done at any time. We've done that with a number of different batches of the vaccines, and the results have always been reproducible. And we'd be happy if a camera team would come along to accompany us here to see that residual vaccine with an intact cooling chain right down to the slide, and then we can look at what we've seen here. I don't have a PowerPoint presentation, sorry for that, but I hope you will be able to follow if I share my screen and look at the different folders. I think it's quite clear. Let me start with a couple of images from BioNTech Pfizer. I'll comment on what we are seeing. I hope you can see. Here we see a snow flurry, really. You have to enlarge your screen. Okay. I can see the full screen. I've shared my screen. She has to swap screens. Just share all screens, if possible. Just a minute. Just trying to open the right menu here. I was able to do this before. Just a second. You still see the small screens, don't you? Yes. Okay, now this is it, yes. So here we see BioNTech Pfizer. That's the overview. I can say right now in BioNTech Pfizer we have seen movement. The vaccine is put on in droplets, and these structures, as we're seeing here, appear. This is metallic structures. I think you see my mouse as well. We see these specific, small, call it chips without wanting to define what a chip may be. We have these Y-type structures as well. And here again, as we've seen before in the observations, metallic structures, we'd have to decide what that is. And this ring is what we saw here. Also, again, a kind of chip-like structure and a bigger metal type of structure, something that is very pointed and sharp. We've seen that again and again in the different specimen, and there's a very good video for this. I'd like to show you that. And here in the overview, I'd like to take AstraZeneca's vaccine. Now very recent, 15th of September, we see very interesting, very tidily arranged structures. I'll see that also in a minute. These are chains that build up. If you look at that, the very bright rim is the rim of the slide, by the way. So this is a part of the microscope. And when these chains here, that's a 40-fold magnitude, and here this is a 1,000-fold magnitude, where we have very impressive, tidy, chain-like structures. And we see here that this is nicely arranged. We can't really say what this is, but it surely is important to analyze this in more detail. And I can report that we have worldwide colleagues. We're an international network where we look at these things regularly, sharing findings, and many researchers have found this worldwide. These small parts, it is, of course, questionable what this is. We don't know what we're looking at here. If we have people experienced in microscopic work, they say sometimes this could look like a parasite, but this is just the pure vaccine. So I don't want to go too far in interpreting here, but I just want to show and present what we saw in the analysis. Let me move on to the video sequences, especially for people who have never seen this before, can see what we see under the microscope here. So we see a lot of movement, we see a lot of life here. We've had this part in the photos. Let me just scroll forward a bit, and again here the same structure. I've got a couple of more here. We see this very sharp-edged metal-like structures everywhere. And we have also got a video which I'd like to highlight some of the parts, so don't be scared by the time. The whole sequence is 13 minutes. I just picked up on a couple of parts. Let me just go to the time code here in 3 minutes. If you look at this, which will be moving into the picture, you've seen that when I was at 3 minutes 40. Here we are, a very big structure which is kind of transparent on the inside with a well-defined edge. We don't know what it is, and it again has these sharp-edged plates here, and the dynamics in it very, very impressive. I'll move forward a bit. Imagine this is in a single droplet of vaccine, and so the audience may be astonished. We are not shocked anymore. We've seen this many times, but of course it is the question of what we are looking at here. I'll try to go forward to the next section I'd like to show. Again here, again and again, these structures that do appear. So it's full of incredibly a lot of stuff, material. These structures, of course, difficult to describe in the way this moves. This is a massive part here, which needs further investigation, quite clearly. And moving forward still, again, similar structures to be observed. And you really can't get enough of it. Again and again and again, we find these things in our analyses, these sharp-edged plates, different kinds of structures. And coming to the next one, very interesting as well. It looks like the night sky with these metal-type structures, Y-shaped structures, again, that we noted. Again, nobody knows what this is supposed to be, but it is there. This is what we see when we look at it in the microscope, under the microscope. And this is a very interesting shot here. Just again, this is the rim of the slide, and this is the slide without the vaccine, and inside it's the vaccine, and this is here the vaccine inside the container on the slide. When we have found this structure, this looks like a little SIM card of a cell phone, and we looked at it and moved a magnet towards this closely. We couldn't find any reaction, this part here, to a magnet that we held close to it. It's very interesting to see what this looks like. Again, this very well-defined structures and this transparency of the object. Very, very interesting. So very, very amazing. And of course, the question is, what is this, and what does that have to do in a so-called vaccine, an experimental medical drug? We'd like to have answers to that. Very, very impressive. And I could carry on for hours like this. And there is more and more pictures that I have, so I think it is important to summarize here this snow flurry. Really, all of this is very amazing, and I think amazing because we have had lots of residual vaccines, most of them AstraZeneca, BioNTech, Pfizer, that we looked at, and I think it is very important that we still carry on with these analyses, and I can really say there's a great number of colleagues. I'll be in another phone call tonight with people from 35 groups of doctors where we will be discussing these things, addressing these topics and other international projects. So we're not saying as a group we can't define what this is, but we hope that we'll find worldwide people who are watching this who have possibilities to analyze this in more detail and have access to it, because it's very important to really define what we're looking at here, and we are happy to present and share our findings at any times. It is reproducible. It has been reproduced many times already, and we are happy to do so again. A brief question. We have found results from laboratory examinations, and we've searched for the graphene oxide, graphene. Maybe that could be differentiated. That destructs of many things, but what we found, lots of heavy metals and suspicions for heavy metals. So as we are in this high-profile medical people here, what does that mean if I find particles that contain chromium? What does it mean if I find nickel? What can that do in the body? Chromium and nickel were two substances that were found again and again, and I can certify these laboratories really do exist. We are doing preliminary studies, and I can say these have been proving a number of times. We've got international findings on this that are being shared. So what does chromium need? What does nickel mean in the body? What does it mean in the bloodstream? What is what's going on? Are there any views? We have to add iron. Iron, yes, iron turns up always. Fe chrome forms steel. But I'd leave the word to the experts. Well, I have a question first. It's the question of dosage. Of course, without having a precise doses, we can't say what effect it'll have on the body. Nickel, we know it may trigger allergic reactions, but I think that's not the major point here. My question to the group, first of all, will be massive, great pictures, unbelievable, extremely shocking. Did you look at other medical liquids as countersamples and found similar phenomena? Well, the first question, yes. We also looked at traditional vaccines in June. I have no images of these, but that, of course, would be reproducible. We looked at the FSME vaccine, and there was no vividness in it. But what we did see, we know that in FSME there is